As I mentioned before, Mishna Torah, Chumash Dvorim, comes to elucidate and elaborate and help us understand the previous Chumashim. So, in a sense, it's Torah Shabbal Peh. So we have an example, famous example. If there would not be Mishnah Torah, it would just be the 4 books. So how would we interpret the story of the Meraglim, of the spies that were sent to ferret out the land of Israel? So in the Torah it says, "Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe leimor," Kaviyochel the Ribono Shalom speaks to Moshe, and he tells him, Shlach lecho anoshim, send. Anoshim means people of stature. V'yosuru es eretz Canaan, and let them tour and see the land of Canaan. Asher ani nosein livnei Yisrael, that I am giving to the Jewish people. So that's what it says in Parsha Shlach. So what would our conclusion be? Why should anything have gone wrong? The Ribono Shalom is the one that sent them. That God, so to speak, initiated the entire thing. So it's as though the Ribono Shalom is setting them up for the disaster that's going to happen. He's the one that told them, Shlach lecha. And if that's the case, so then the entire event is so strange. But we read in Chumash Dvorim, Moshe explains what happened. V'atikruvun elai kulchem. So Rashi says, Birvuvya. Skenim, Norim, Anoshim, Noshim, that a mob comes to Moshe. Mixed up. All sorts of people. Now, in the people, when you have a mob of people, today we call it a demonstration. So there are all sorts of people who are there. There are those that come because they have nothing else to do. There are those that come to observe the situation. There are those that come for a purpose. There are all sorts of groups of people, all sorts of motivations. It's not clear who they are, what do they want. So Moshe says, "V'atikruvun elai kulchem," you all came together, and you said, let us take spies and send them to Eretz Yisrael, and they'll come back and give us a report. So according to the story that Moshe tells us here in the Chumash Dvorim, the whole thing was initiated not by God and not by Moshe, but by a mob of people who came. And they're the ones that said, we want to send spies. Now Rashi alludes to this in Parsha Shlach, because when we know this piece of Chumash Dvorim, so we understand what Rashi means in Parsha Shlach. In Parsha Shlach it says, Shlach lecho. So the word lecho is extra. It should be Shlach Anoshim, send people. What's lecho to you? So Rashi there says, lecho, ani eineni mitzavecha. I am not commanding you to do anything. God says, so to speak, leave me out of this. Ima torah, if you want to shlach, you can send. But ani eneni mitzavacho. I'm not telling you to send. I'm telling you just the opposite. Rely on my judgment, so to speak, on my assessment. I promised the land to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I said it's Eretz Zavas Cholav V'Dvosh. It's Eretz Tova Ma'od Ma'od. It's the best piece of real estate on the globe. They want to send spies? No, Moshe. Yeah. I'm not involved. Well, if that's the case, because that's what we see here in the Chumash Dvarim, then it becomes more understandable that it's a setup for disaster, and that the Ribono Shel Olam Kaviyachol is attempting to prevent the disaster. Now, he cannot interfere with the free will of people, with the free will of Moshe, and with the free will of the Jewish people. Ani eni mitzavcha. I'm not commanding you. I can't stop you. But Moshe, you're going to send people because there's a mob that comes, and today they have nothing to do and they want to send spies. Tomorrow they'll have something to... I told you, though, the whole basis of Yetzias Mitzrayim is the fact that they're going to go to Eretz Yisrael. I'm going to bring you to Eretz Yisrael. And that was the original message that Moshe told to the Jewish people when he revealed himself to them in Mitzrayim. In the Ribono Shel Olam Lashon of Geula. Yitzalti v'lakachti. But then he says, Ve'evesi eschem. And I'm going to bring you el ha'aretz hatova, to the good land, asher nishbati lavoseichem, that I took an oath to the forefathers that it's going to be yours. So Moshe here admits, as he does throughout Chumash Dvarim, one of the fascinating facets of Chumash Dvarim is how Moshe is willing to accept personal blame for a lot of the things that happened in the desert. That's what makes Moshe the most humble of all human beings. Moshe could say, it's all your fault. But he doesn't say that. He says, V'eshma l'kolchem. And I listened to you. There was no reason for me to listen to you. I could have told you that God, so to speak, is neutral. I don't want to do anything against God. He didn't tell me to send, so why should I send? And in fact, Moshe could have told him that God guarantees that it's such a wonderful country and that we will be able to overcome our enemies and settle it and live there. But he didn't say that. I heard what you said. Now Moshe is confident that if he sends 12 legitimate representatives of the Jewish people, that they're going to come back with a good report. How could they come back with anything different? Moshe Rabbeinu pines for the moment that he can enter Eretz Yisrael. His greatest punishment is that he shomalo sova, that I can't go there. So Moshe is overcome with desire and love for Eretz Yisrael, and therefore when he sends these 12 people, he is certain that he's going to get a favorable report, because he can't imagine that somehow they don't see it the way he sees it. But as the story unfolded in Parshas Shlach, and as the story unfolds here in Parshas Dvarim as well, and this time of Tisha B'Av is the anniversary of that story. They came back on Tisha B'Av and the Jewish people wept that night. And the Rebbeinu Shalom said, tonight you weep for nothing, but there will be, on this date, you will weep for something. It's not an empty date. So Moshe admits that, so to speak, he was in error listening to them. He should never have listened to them. And because of that, he complained, oh no, where are we going? How can we go? It's a whole sad story. The sad story of the Meraglim and of those who speak against Eretz Yisrael. Now there is always in this period of time, there's a concerted effort to have Yemei Iyun, to have times when people speak about the Aveira of Lashon Hara, to try and eradicate as much as possible that type of a sin from within us. So the Torah teaches us that there not only is Lashon Hara about people, there's Lashon Hara about Eretz Yisrael. You're not allowed to say it. There's a post in the Israeli government called the Mavaker Hamdina. He's the ombudsman, controller for the state of Israel. He never has a good word to say. Never. I've been listening for 21 years. Not one thing is good. So after a while, who cares what he says? He keeps on saying, well, what I said, nobody fulfilled. Who wants to fulfill what you said? You have nothing but negativity to say. So that's a big Aveira. And unfortunately, a lot of the Jewish world is caught in that Aveira today. We see it in front of our eyes. We see it on all sides of the spectrum. So that was the sin of the Meraglim. That was the disaster that occurred. And we would not understand the full story, the full import of it, if the only reference to it would have been in Chumash Bamidbar and the Parsha of Shlach. Because then we would have thought that somehow it's God's fault, Kaviyachol, and that we are just pawns in the game. But now we realize that that's not the story at all. And we'll see there are other instances in Chumash Dvarim that refer to what happened. It's described before, that come, so to speak, to explain and to correct any misconceptions that we may have as to what happened and to the consequences that flowed therefrom. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashia Omer Rotza Kodesh Baruch Hu Lazakos Es Yisrael Leficha Chir B'Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenevar Anoich B'Nei Zman Sitko Yadil Torah Yadir. Iskatol Shmei Rabba.